You're afraid to do something that you don't understand. So all of you have got to start taking the time to really learning about what's available to you in this country. For those of you who have credit card debt, does anybody in this room have credit card debt? Oh, now I know you're all a bunch of liars. Really, Philippines? Fear, shame, and anger, the three internal obstacles to wealth. When you say no, when you should be saying yes. If you have credit card debt and you want to get ahead, pay off your credit card debt. There is not one investment in this world that can guarantee you a 36 to 40% a year return on your money, except paying off your credit card debt. I ask all of you to understand that debt is bondage, and you will never have financial freedom if you are in bondage. So your first step of action out there to get on this road to wealth is to get out of debt. Once you are out of debt, you then have to start looking at what should you do with your money. Every single one of you should have two pots of money. One pot that is for savings, for emergencies, so that if anything happens to you, you have money that you can access to pay your monthly bills, to keep your life going, and you should not care how much that money is earning. So many of you say to me, Susie, I don't want to put money in savings. It's only earning 0.5%. Are you kidding me? Who cares? 0.5% is better than nothing. 1,000 pesos is better than no pesos. For those of you who want to buy a home, now is the time to buy a home if you can afford it. If you do the math on many of these homes, you will find that your mortgage, along with your property taxes, along with your insurance, to buy a home will be approximately what your rent might be for an equal property. This is the time for you to own a home if you can afford it. How do you know if you can afford it? You have to have at least 20% to put down. Besides 20% to put down, you all have to have at least an 8-month savings account. Because if you buy a home with 20% to put down, and something happens to you and you no longer can work to pay the mortgage or the loan, you'll lose the loan. You'll lose the house. Do you understand? If you have an emergency fund that I was talking about, at least you have money to pay the mortgage if you don't have money coming in, so you don't lose the house. It's a perfect time now. If you can afford 20% to put down, you have an 8-month emergency fund. You know that you can afford the payments on a 20-year fixed-rate mortgage or less. You know that you can afford the mortgage payments, the insurance, the taxes, and maintenance on the home. If you know you can afford all that, I ask you all to start looking into that. Will you stop taking your money and investing it in dollars? Ooh, we got a little reaction there. All right, so that means you must be doing it. Listen, if you want the Philippines to grow, if you want this to be a really strong country, financially speaking, where you live here, you have got to start to invest in yourselves. You have no advantage in owning dollars. The peso is getting stronger. Pesos only matter to you what happens to them if you do a lot of traveling overseas and you're exchanging money and things like that. But if you're here, Stay with the peso. Stay with your country. Make your country feel the love that you have for it and support it with what you do with your money. So I'm asking you, now is the time, and it was the time last year as well, that you invest in yourselves.
Suzi is done with her talk and she's ready to take questions from the audience and give them her hand of tough love.
So many things that I could tell you and I could talk to you about. But all of you took the time, and I thank you very much for doing so, to come see me. So what is it that you want to know from me? This is the time that I want to hear you ask me a question. Because chances of the world's personal finance experts standing in front of you to answer your questions beyond tonight may be nil. So you need to take advantage of it. Here we go. Yes,
Hi,
ma'am.
Suzi. I'm Rose Fausto. I write a column entitled Raising Children with High FQ, Financial Intelligence Quotient. I grew up with a mom always reminding us to live within your means, but also to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Yes.
So, more or less, that's the guiding principle that I've been living by. And I do have some sort of a formula when I could buy my luxury. To simplify for myself and for my kids, I say, if you really want to buy a luxury, you should be able to afford at least 10 pieces of it. So
Yes.
is there any Suzi Orman formula in buying your luxury?
Yeah. So my role model was my father and my mother. My father, when I was a teenager, I drove up to his place of business, which was a 400 square foot, very tiny chicken shack that was totally on fire. And my father was outside, and we only had one car, obviously, and we drove up to pick up my daddy, and all of a sudden we see my father run back into this little tiny chicken shack that was totally on fire to grab his cash register, because all the money he had in the world was inside that cash register. The cash register back in those days was made out of total steel, and it had already melted shut because of the flames. And as he threw it down on the ground, all the skin on his chest and his arms came with it. And that's when I learned from my father that money was more important than life itself, because obviously he risked his life for it. He never recovered from that, even though he went on to live. He got emphysema from that fire, and he went for it. The lesson that taught me from my father was that money really isn't that important. People first, then money, then things. And that's how I close my show every single Saturday night. So my mentor was somebody who I didn't want to be like. I wanted to grow up valuing myself over what money could buy me. I wanted to grow up valuing life over money. And I was able to do that, and I'm still able to do that because of the great loss my father took in his lifetime. When it comes to children, here's what's interesting. Children do not listen to what you say, they do what you do. And you have to be very careful of the words that you use around children, because you, without knowing it, can instill a message in them of being less versus being more of who they really are. So, even if you can afford something, and you could buy 10 times it for yourself, the question really becomes, do you buy it because of what it shows the children you are buying? So it's a very interesting thing as to when do you buy something even though you can afford to buy it. If you want to teach your children value, ethics, and money. So you have to let your heart guide you for that. Listen, if you don't have any credit card debt, you have money in savings, you've been fully funding your retirement from day one, you have a home and you're on the path to having that home paid outright sooner than later, if you want to buy yourself something, go ahead and do so. But my goal for all of you would be to get more pleasure out of saving than you do spending. Just because I have money, I really don't enjoy spending it. I love saving it. I love eating at home rather than going to some restaurant that's salting their food so much and I'm paying a fortune to make me fat. I enjoy, keeping my car for 10 or 15 years before I buy a new one. I love living in little houses because I don't need a big house. So my biggest house is 2,200 square feet. Once, as many of you may know, I was on the Oprah